Hey guys, wanted to make a quick video here about an interesting scenario that I had in GOAT format. Something that I've discussed with a few people, and I feel like rather than having to explain it a million times, it's just easy to make a video and then share that. So, I'm playing a game here against based Lolly, who's a pretty good player in GOAT format. We're playing very similar decks here. We're both playing Angel Chaos. And I'm up 1-0 in the match, and kind of what happened before here, is kind of irrelevant. But it's my turn, it's my draw phase, and I've drawn a Sengen for the turn. And you'll see that I have a Sinister Serpent in my graveyard. And it's also worth noting that I have 2 copies of Tsukiyomi in my deck, which would be a great out to this Thousand Eyes, right? So, when I'm considering making a play in GOAT format, this is like any play. I sort of try to think about like all of the possible outcomes and like how I can get the outcomes that I want. So let's think here. What's the outcome that we'd want? Obviously, we're going to be setting Sengen for our turn, and it would be nice if our opponent attacked into our set Sengen, and then we could search Tsukiyomi in order to deal with the Thousand Eyes, attack over it in battle and still have a bunch of GOAT tokens. What we don't want is if we set Sengen and our opponent doesn't attack our Sengen and just continues attacking our GOAT tokens and doesn't let us search the Tsukiyomi. So I'll show you what I did here. So you're going to notice that I go to my standby phase. You'll see that I'm checking my graveyard. My opponent's checking my graveyard as well, and I have Sinister. I've been using it the last few turns, but I just go to my main phase. You'll see here. I just go to my main phase without adding the Sinister, and this is actually intentional. I am intentionally not adding Sinister Serpent here, and while this is a play that is certainly known, right? Like I'm certainly not the first person to ever do this. The reasons that led me to do this are very unique, and so here's why I don't add Sinister here. So again, the scenario that we want is for our opponent to attack into our Sengen and let us search our Tsukiyomi. Now consider if we add Sinister Serpent to our hand. We've drawn 1 card for our turn, and our opponent doesn't know what it is. So if we just set a monster and pass, what is our opponent, after adding Sinister, right? If we add Sinister to our hand, set a monster and pass, what's our opponent going to think? Obviously, he's not going to know what our set monster is, but most likely, he's going to think it's Sinister, right? Because the probability of us drawing a monster for our turn and it being one that we want to set instead of Sinister is pretty low. So he's going to assume it's Sinister. And if you're Lolly here, your opponent has 3 goats in a Sinister set, well, which are you going to attack? Well, you're going to attack the goat token, because attacking this Sinister doesn't accomplish anything. So, if we add Sinister and set Sengen, more than likely, our opponent will not attack the set Sengen. He's going to attack a goat instead, which is not what we want, right? Because what I began with saying here is that we want our opponent to attack Sengen to search Tsukiyomi. Now consider if we don't add Sinister, right, and we set a monster and say go. Our opponent doesn't know what it is, right? It could be anything. It could be Sengen, of course, or it could be like some sort of flip effect monster, like a morphing jar that maybe I want to resolve. So our opponent is going to be less inclined to attack the GOAT tokens in that case, right? If we have some set monster, we can just naturally draw the Tsukiyomi, and our opponent's not going to want to attack the GOAT, us draw Tsukiyomi for the turn, deal with 1,000 Eyes, and then now we have, like, I don't know, the set Jakochi or something that we can just, like, flip and draw a bunch of cards with. So, if we set the Sengen without adding the Sinister, is it guaranteed that our opponent will attack Sengen? Well, no, it's not, but it's much more likely, because we are literally telling our opponent that we have not set Sinister, that it is 100% not a Sinister, and there is something that he could gain by attacking it. Because if it is Sinister, like I said, he has nothing to gain by attacking it. So what I decide to do is, I intentionally don't add the Sinister, set Sengen and pass, and we'll see what happens. So our opponent draws, adds his Sinister back, and he actually Tsukiyomi's the Thousand Eyes, and attacks a goat and takes our set Sangen. And that's obviously not what we wanted because we don't get to search for Sangen. And I didn't know he had Tsukiyomi in hand, but it does give us the information that our opponent has Tsukiyomi. His 1,000 Eyes is obviously down to 0 now, and he has to keep playing the Tsukiyomi every turn if he wants to deal with our play. So it didn't work out quite the way that I wanted, but that's just me explaining why I did this particular play. It's about we're essentially doing a mind game here, which is we're telling our opponent that we're not setting Sinister. And in this case, since I drew a Sangen, I thought it was advantageous to literally tell our opponent this is 100% not Sinister. And obviously when we're doing this, we're trying to convince our opponent that we forgot Sinister, right? Because obviously, if our opponent knows that we're intentionally not adding Sinister in order to bait him into attacking, then he could correctly read that our set is probably something that we want him to attack and then not attack it, if that makes sense. But in this case, I don't think my particular opponent here was on that level with me. Obviously, it is very common in GOAT format to just forget Sinister. Even good players do it every once in a while. So, if I were playing someone and they did this play, I would probably not put them on intentionally not adding Sinister to bait them into attacking or using some kind of removal. In this case, we baited him into showing Tsukiyomi rather than attacking. But obviously, now that the Sangen is equipped to 1,000 Eyes, if we were to draw something like a spell or trap removal card, we could just use it, search with our Sangen, get the Tsukiyomi, and then deal with the 1,000 Eyes. That's the idea. So yeah, kind of a long explanation, but it's a play that doesn't come up very much, and I think is worth talking about. And not only just explaining the play that I made and why I did it, but also just kind of the approach that I take to the game in general, which is trying to think of all of the different possibilities and then trying to do the play that makes the one that I want to happen more likely to happen. And in this particular case, it was by not adding Sinister. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I hope that sort of explains why I did what I did. Thanks.